Hello, I'm Jeffrey Mark, call sign KM6TVJ. This is the second video on amateur radio for prepping and emergency communications. If you watched the first video, and if you're interested in learning about basic communication skills, then you've probably taken a look at the lesson videos I linked to in that first video. Maybe you've even checked out the practice tests. And if you have, unless you're an electrical engineer with radio frequency circuit skills and read federal regulations for fun, you might have a lot of questions. This is perfectly normal. In this video, I'll give a broad outline of what's on the technician test. The technician test is the first of 3 amateur radio tests, the licensing levels. The technician license covers local communications for local groups, organizing and communicating over 5 to 25 miles. And it's all you legally need to get started in amateur radio. On the technician test, there are 423 possible multiple choice questions. Your test will have 35 of them randomly chosen, and you'll have to get 23 out of 35 correct to pass. Now, you could memorize every question and its correct answer and pass the test easily. But think about it. When you're in the field, during an emergency, with no internet to look stuff up, all you'll have to count on is the info in your head. And if you really understand the concepts on the test, the concepts of amateur radio, then you'll be able to improvise, troubleshoot, and problem solve. Radio communications covers so many interesting fields: engineering, electronics, solar weather, upper atmospherics, proper procedures, legal limits, and safety. Understanding of any one of these and how it interacts with all the others could be the information that you need at some critical moment. So, rather than thinking of this process as just studying to pass a test, I thought of it as well-researched, well-organized preparation for an important skill. When I was studying those videos, I got confused about how different concepts linked with other information. So I hope by giving you an overview of all the sections on the test, you won't be as confused. So let's get started. There are 10 sections of information on the technician test. They are numbered T1 through T0. Now you can think of T0 as T10, but the FCC for some reason calls it T0. Section T1, FCC Rules and Regulations. There will be 6 questions from this section on the test. Now, if there was ever a section that you could just memorize the questions and correct answers for and be fine, this is the one. That said, this is the section that will keep you legal and safe while you're on the air. Section T2, Operating Procedures. There are 3 questions from this section on the test. Now, this section is very important to learn because it will teach you how to communicate effectively within the scope of amateur radio communications. Section T3, Radio Waves and Propagation. There are 3 questions from this section on the test. Radio waves and propagations talk about what happens to your signal from when it leaves your radio until it gets to its intended destination. If you really learn the topics in this section, you'll be able to troubleshoot when your signal doesn't get to its intended destination. Section T4, Practices and Station Setup. There are 2 questions from this section on the test. The exciting thing about this section is learning how to set up your station, both at home and in the field. At home, it's easy. It's a controlled environment. And out in the field, under emergency conditions, knowing what you're going to need for a proper station setup is vital. Section T5, Electrical Principles in Math. There are 4 questions from this section on the test. You might be thinking, math, electrical principles, that's difficult. It's really not. This is the technician level test, so everything is a bit simple. However, learning this stuff gives you the basics of what's going on inside your rig. Section T6, Electrical Components and Circuits. There are 4 questions from this section on the test. Components are like resistors, capacitors, transistors, the building blocks of amplifiers, radios, and the equipment that you'll be using every day in emergency communication. Section T7, Station Equipment, Troubleshooting, and Antennas. There are 4 questions on the test from this section. Station equipment, we've already talked about. It's your radio, it's your antenna, it's your amplifier. Understanding how they work together. Troubleshooting. Troubleshooting to me is one of the most important concepts to learn, and this is where you learn the best practices in amateur radio of how to go from I have a problem to finding a solution. Section T8, Modulation modes, amateur satellites, and digital modes. There are 4 questions on the test from this section. Now you already know 2 modulation modes, AM and FM. There are a few more. And knowing which one the intended recipient is expecting, knowing which ones work at different times of day or under different circumstances is incredibly important for getting your communication out there. Using satellites to communicate expands that 5 to 25 miles out to the entire planet if you know what you're doing. Digital modes, very exciting. Not only how to transmit digital information, but how to transmit audio information in a digital format. Section T9, Antennas and Feed Lines. There are 2 questions on the test from this section. Now, your radio is useless without an antenna. That's how the signal actually gets out into the environment. And the feed line is what gets the signal from the radio to the antenna. Knowing those 2 parts of the chain, knowing how they work, is how you assure that your signal gets out. This is also the section that, if you truly understand the principles involved, will allow you to build an antenna from almost any hunk of metal. I have built antennas from wire coat hangers, and you can too if you understand the concepts in this section. Section T0, or Section T10 if you are actually following this logically. Electrical safety, radio frequency safety, and antenna safety. There are 3 questions on the test from this section. Safety. Do I really need to say more? You're not going to be working with a lot of power with a technician license. However, you could still blow up your radio if you don't know the proper safety procedures. And understanding the concepts in this section will keep you safe when you move on to higher power radios. Thank you for watching. There's more information linked below. Other episodes coming up, I'll be talking about what radios to choose for what situations and how to really get started. Get studying. I'll see you on the air. This is Jeffrey Mark, KM6 TVJ 73.